As the winter air bit into my skin, I gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity. My wife, the woman I had loved, trusted, and sacrificed, for was walking hand in hand with another man into a hotel. The same woman who kissed me goodbye before my deployment, who promised to wait for me, who reassured our daughter that we were a family. The rage in my chest was nearly suffocating, but I kept my composure. This wasn't just about me. Stacy, my 15-year-old daughter, was at home, anxiously waiting for answers. She was the reason I had flown back 7,000 miles in desperation. She had seen her mother sneaking out late at night with Donald Town's arrogant, power-hungry mayor while I was stationed in Afghanistan. And now, seeing them together in public, completely unashamed, confirmed what I had feared the most. What would you do if you were in my position? Would you storm in and expose the betrayal? Would you walk away silently, knowing the damage was already done? Or would you plan something even bigger? This was no longer about confronting my cheating wife. It was about protecting my daughter from the devastating fallout. But how do you shield a child from a mother's betrayal? Drop a comment below and let me know what you think I should have done. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Help me reach 1,000 subs so we can share more stories that deserve to be heard. In the heart of winter, amidst the twinkling lights and festive cheer of the city's annual roller rink, a night meant for celebration turned into a dramatic unraveling of trust and betrayal. What should have been a romantic evening with laughter and joy quickly morphed into a public confrontation that would forever alter the lives of everyone involved. As my heart raced with anticipation for the surprise I had planned for my girlfriend, little did I know that this night would not be about love, but rather the painful revelation of infidelity that had been lurking in the shadows. In that moment, surrounded by friends and strangers alike, I found myself standing at the crossroads of heartbreak and resolution, ready to expose the truth that had shattered our relationship. My daughter Stacy called me in a panic, her voice trembling, as she expressed concern about her mother's late-night outings. Even though I was thousands of miles away, serving overseas, I could hear the anxiety in her voice as she described how her mother, Kathy, had been spending more and more time with a man named Donald the town's mayor, known for his flashy car and occasional limousine rides. Stacy, just 15, was struggling with the situation. She detailed how Kathy had been staying out late multiple nights a week, always in Donald's company. My heart sank as I listened, but I assured her I would come home as soon as possible. I could sense Stacy's fear and confusion through our brief conversation. She asked me to handle things carefully, to not make the situation worse, and begged for me to return quickly. I told her I would, but as I hung up, I wondered what had led to this. My name is Robert Crawford. I'm 42 years old, a design specialist for a large electronics firm, and a major in the National Guard. Currently, I'm stationed in Afghanistan, where I've been serving a year-long assignment as part of the command staff. I've been married to Kathy, the love of my life, for 18 years. Together, we have a beautiful daughter, Stacy, who is our pride and joy. Kathy is 40, though you wouldn't know it. She's as stunning as the day we met. Her shoulder-length brown hair and sparkling eyes, combined with her warm smile, have always made her the most beautiful woman in any room. Up until that call, I believed our marriage was perfect. Sure, the distance caused by my deployments was difficult, but we always stayed connected. And whenever I came home, things between us felt just as strong as they did the day we said our vows. I never had any reason to doubt Kathy's faithfulness. So why now? Why was she sneaking around with another man? After that call, I completed the paperwork for 30 days of emergency family leave. I caught the first available flight home, and after a grueling 26-hour journey, I found myself driving a rented car through the quiet streets of our small town. It was late November, and as I pulled up half a block from our house, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The sun had long set, and the dim streetlights cast an eerie glow over the neighborhood. I could see the lights on in the house kitchen, living room, and upstairs bedroom. My heart raced as I watched from the car. Kathy was clearly getting ready to go out, moving around the house in a way that seemed almost too familiar. I discreetly called Stacy, who whispered that her mom had been in her room for over an hour, getting ready. "Dad, why is she doing this to us?" she asked, her voice breaking. I didn't know what to say. I assured her that I was home, and that I would get to the bottom of it. "We'll figure this out, Stace. I love you," I whispered, as I hung up. At 7 o'clock, a sleek black Mercedes pulled into our driveway. A tall, sharply dressed man stepped out, and I recognized him immediately. It was Donald Kai. He paused outside the car, talking on his phone, while the lights upstairs went out. A moment later, the front door opened, and Kathy stepped outside. She looked stunning in a fitted dress that accentuated everything I had always loved about her. But instead of feeling the usual pride, I felt a knot in my stomach. She smiled, a smile I had seen 1,000 times before, but this time, it was for him. She glanced back toward the house, as if checking that Stacy wasn't watching, and then kissed Donald as he helped her into the car. I sat there in stunned silence, barely able to believe what I had just seen. My wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was sneaking off with another man. And yet, even in my shock, I managed to snap a few pictures with my phone. I tailed them as they drove across town, keeping a safe distance in the light evening traffic. They pulled into the parking lot of the new hotel downtown, and I parked a few spaces away. I watched as they walked inside, arms wrapped around each other like a couple in love. It was almost too much to bear, but I couldn't turn away. I followed them inside, passing through the lobby and seeing the board listing the night's events. The St. James Hospital Charity Ballon, the 3rd floor. Perfect. I wasn't dressed for the occasion, still in my fatigues from the flight. But I didn't care. I needed to see more. I slipped up the stairs and found the ballroom. As I approached the entrance, I saw them through the open doors. Kathy and Donald, mingling with the other guests, looking every bit the perfect couple. I was just another face in the crowd. No one recognized me. Least of all Kathy. To her, I was still 10,000 miles away, serving my country in a foreign desert, while she dishonored everything we had built together. I stood there for a few more moments, watching them smile and laugh with their friends. The sight was unbearable. My head spun as I realized the full weight of what was happening. My wife, who had promised to be faithful, had moved on with another man while I was risking my life overseas. I had never felt so betrayed. Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. This wasn't the time for emotions. I had to act. I slipped away from the ballroom, retreating to the quiet of a restroom stall to gather my thoughts. What was I going to do? I couldn't confront them here in front of all those people. No, I needed to be smart. I needed a plan. And so, sitting there, heartbroken but determined, I started to piece together my next moves. A different kind of enemy now stood before me, one far more personal than anything I had faced in combat. For 30 minutes, I remained in the bathroom stall, gathering myself, letting the hotel's charity event reach its peak. It wasn't until the ballroom was fully alive with laughter and music that I dared approach the entrance. Few people noticed as I slipped in, blending into the shadows near the far wall, away from the bar and food tables. Dressed in my military uniform, I didn't need a ticket to gain entry. The respect this uniform commanded was far more powerful than any invitation. The young man taking tickets at the door saluted me, offering a polite, "Welcome, sir," as I walked past. But as I entered, a bitter thought crossed my mind. It's a shame my wife and her lover don't show the same kind of respect for me or the uniform I wear. It didn't take long to spot them. Kathy's wife was dancing with her new man. They swayed slowly to the rhythm of the music, her arms wrapped around his neck, her head resting intimately on his chest, while his hands rested possessively on her waist, slipping lower. Anger boiled inside me. I wanted nothing more than to storm across the dance floor and knock the smug grin off his face. But I held back. What I needed wasn't a moment of satisfaction that would land me in jail. I needed proof. Hard evidence of their betrayal. I raised my phone and took a few photos, my heart pounding as they shared an intimate kiss, completely unaware of my presence. I moved away from the crowd, finding a quiet corner where I could keep watch on the ballroom doors. Potency, an essential skill the Army had drilled into May, was my ally tonight, and it paid off. Hours passed, and eventually, the event began winding down. Guests started trickling out, laughing, chatting, returning to their everyday lives. But my night wasn't over. I waited, my eyes trained on the ballroom doors, until finally, Kathy and her lover Mayor Donald calmly emerged, arm in arm. They lingered just outside, exchanging smiles and soft words, before turning toward the elevators. But instead of heading down to leave, they pressed the button to go up. That was odd. I followed at a distance, keeping just close enough to watch them without being seen. The elevators stopped on the 11th floor, I memorized the number and headed back to the lobby, where I approached the registration desk. Flashing my government ID, I told the attendant I had an urgent message for Mayor Comely. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually gave me the room number, 1114. I thanked her and made my way to the 11th floor, quietly slipping down the hallway until I found the door. Leaning against the wall, I listened. Muffled voices, nothing more. I checked my watch. Midnight. Kathy had been coming home late for months, now sometimes as late as 7 a.m. I had a long wait ahead, but I was prepared. Again, patience would serve me well. I returned to the stairwell, where I could watch the room from a safe distance. As I sat there in the cold, sterile hallway, my mind raced. The betrayal was more than just infidelity. It was the destruction of the life we had built together. Every moment we shared, every promise she had made to love and cherish me, shattered by this man she was with now. My thoughts swirled in an emotional storm of anger, pain, and disbelief. How could she? How could the woman I loved, the mother of my child, share her body and soul with another man? Around 1:30 a.m., I moved closer to the door, pressing my ear against it. That's when I heard it, the unmistakable sounds of passion. Kathy's voice, once full of love for me, was now crying out for him. Yes. Oh God, yes. Do me harder, Don. You're so good. My heart cracked wide open as I heard the very words she used to whisper to me. Tears streamed down my face, but I forced myself to stay composed. I wasn't here for an emotional breakdown. I was here for proof. At 2 a.m., the door clicked open. I stepped into position, phone in hand, ready to capture their departure. Mayor Comely exited first, looking smug and satisfied, with Kathy following close behind. She looked fresh, as if the night had only just begun for her, leaning into him like a love-struck teenager. I recorded every second as they kissed, oblivious to my presence. But then, Kathy spotted me, her face drained of color, eyes wide with shock. She stammered, What are you doing here?" Her hand flew to her chest, as if to steady herself from the weight of her guilt. "How was your little rendezvous?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She dropped to her knees, pleading, "This wasn't supposed to happen. You weren't supposed to find out." Comely, sensing the gravity of the situation, tried to interject, stammering something about how it wasn't what it seemed. But it was too late for excuses. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, was now a stranger, kneeling in front of me, begging for forgiveness she didn't deserve. I had all the proof I needed, but what came next? Revenge? Divorce? As I stood there, watching her crumble, the reality hit me hard. This wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the end of a life I had fought to preserve. And there was no going back. Here's a revised and expanded version of the passage, written in English with a more immersive tone for an American audience. I couldn't help but remark sarcastically on the bitter irony of it all, how the mayor, of all people, had chosen to entangle himself in a campaign scandal involving infidelity. The situation was surreal, and the moral fabric of the man who was supposed to lead our community was completely in question. My voice was steady, but the rage simmered beneath the surface as I questioned his integrity. How could someone like him, entrusted with power, play a part in the destruction of my marriage while I was away serving our country? The mayor, predictably, denied any serious involvement with Kathy. He tried to paint himself as a distant figure in the affair, urging her to back him up. He turned to her, eyes pleading, desperate for her to corroborate his story, to give him some sort of lifeline. But Kathy, unshaken by his attempts, refused to be manipulated. She began recounting what I already knew, describing the sounds I had heard through the door, the kissing, the moaning, the whispered phrases I could never forget. Her betrayal was laid bare for all to see. I stood there, resigned. "Fine," I said, my voice hollow. "She's yours now." I couldn't hide the frustration and bitterness. But don't think for a second either of you are walking away from this unscathed. You're both cowards, and even our daughter knows what you've done. The mayor stood frozen, stunned into silence, his face pale as if he had just realized the full weight of his actions. Kathy, on the other hand, had collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The sight of her was pitiful, but it did nothing to soften the blow she had dealt. I didn't care anymore. She had made her choice. I turned to her and said coldly, "Don't bother coming home tonight. Spend it with him instead." My words were sharp, cutting through the tension. "I'll be home with our daughter. On Monday, I'll file for divorce, and the media will hear about the mayor's little affair too. Stay away until I'm done with my 30-day emergency leave. And then you can figure out what you want to do with your life." Kathy tried to plead, her voice trembling as she begged for forgiveness. She wanted me to keep the affair a secret from Stacy, our daughter. But that ship had sailed. Stacy already knew, and the damage had been done. I shook my head, unable to understand how Kathy could have done this while I was deployed, risking my life overseas. "You made your choice, Kathy," I said quietly, the hurt evident in my voice. Disheartened, I walked towards the elevator as Kathy's apologies echoed behind me. But I couldn't accept them, not now. Not after everything that had happened. I glanced back once, seeing her and the mayor standing together, and felt nothing but contempt. "You deserve each other," I muttered, before stepping into the elevator and letting the doors close behind me. When I arrived home, Stacy was waiting for me. Her face was red, her eyes swollen from crying. She hugged me tightly the moment I walked in, burying her face in my chest. "I missed you so much, Dad," she whispered through her tears. "I missed you too, sweetheart," I said, holding her close. The pain in my heart intensified as I thought about what she must have been going through while I was gone. I tried to reassure her. "I found your mom and the mayor just like we thought." Stacy nodded, pulling back slightly. "I'm not surprised," she said bitterly. "I didn't care if she came home or not. She hasn't cared about me for months." I felt like I didn't even exist. My heart broke hearing her say that. "You know I would never let anything happen to you," I said softly. "But I can't take you back with me to Afghanistan." "Please, Dad," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I can't stay here with her. I don't want to be with her." "I know, Stacy," I said, wiping away her tears. "But she's still your mother, and no matter how you feel about her right now, you need to remember that." "She doesn't love me, Dad," Stacy whispered, her body shaking as she cried. "She never did. Not like you do." I held her tightly, letting her cry in my arms. "It's not that simple," I said quietly, unsure how to comfort her. But I understood her anger. Her mother had abandoned her emotionally long before I even realized it. After I finally convinced Stacy to go to bed, I locked up the house, even setting the chains on the doors just in case Kathy decided to come back. I had no proof that Kathy and the mayor had been in our bedroom, but I wasn't willing to risk it. I slept on the couch, though I couldn't get much sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined how things would play out when Kathy came to collect her things. I could have taken the high road and gone to a hotel, leaving her the house, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. She was the one who destroyed our marriage. She could suffer the inconvenience of being displaced. Her lover could take her in. They were already acting like a married couple. Now they could see what it was really like. Stacy and I slept in until almost noon the next day. I woke up first, made coffee, and scrambled some eggs for us both. We sat in silence at the table, engaging in small talk while we ate, doing our best to avoid talking about Kathy or the mayor. But the tension lingered, unspoken, yet heavy in the air. Then the phone rang. Stacy and I exchanged a glance before she picked it up. "Mom," she said, her tone cold and distant. Kathy was on the other end, trying to sound apologetic, but Stacy wasn't having it. She was furious. "You've been with him for months," Stacy snapped. "This wasn't a one-time mistake, Mom. And don't think for a second I'm going to let Dad forgive you." Kathy pleaded with her not to hurt the mayor's reputation, but Stacy wasn't swayed. She had had enough. "I don't care about him," Stacy said sharply. "You betrayed us." After the call ended, Stacy looked at me, frustrated. "She still doesn't get it," she said, shaking her head. "She doesn't understand why you won't let her come back." "She will," I reassured her. "The consequences are just beginning." The rest of the day passed quietly. We tried to distract ourselves with talk of Stacy's future. She was worried about how her friends would react when they found out about her mother's affair, but I assured her that true friends would stand by her. I promised to call my mom and see if Stacy could stay with her until I finished my deployment. Later that afternoon, the phone rang again. It was Kathy. I answered, but as soon as I heard her say, "Bob, please give me a chance to explain," I handed the phone to Stacy without saying a word. "What, Mom?" Stacy's voice was hard, her expression cold. She held the phone away from her ear so I could hear what Kathy was saying. Kathy begged to speak to me, but Stacy wasn't having it. She demanded answers for her mother's actions, accusing her of betraying our family. Kathy tried to defend herself, claiming she never meant to hurt anyone. But Stacy wasn't convinced. She was done with excuses. In a tense and emotional exchange, Kathy could be heard crying as Stacy voiced her deep hurt and disappointment, making it clear how Kathy's actions had caused significant pain to their family. Kathy, through tears, responded by expressing her love for both Stacy and me, but Stacy remained skeptical. At one point, Kathy quietly asked for some of her personal belongings, including clothes and birth control pills, all the while expressing regret and frustration. Stacy, not holding back, sarcastically mentioned the possibility of Kathy becoming pregnant by the mayor, hinting at the inconvenience it would bring, before stating that she'd pack Kathy's things and leave them at the curb for her to pick up. After hanging up, Stacy broke down in tears, and I pulled her into my arms, comforting her as best as I could. I acknowledged that she had been tough on her mother, but I completely understood her anger. I reassured her that we would get through this ordeal together. After holding her a little longer, I left to gather the items Kathy had requested, but my mind was racing with plans. I retreated to my office to strategize, drawing on my military training to devise a careful plan for handling the situation. This felt like a battle, one that required precision and foresight. The tasks were straightforward. I would hire a divorce lawyer, cancel our joint credit cards, and get new ones for myself and Stacy. I'd change the beneficiary on my life insurance and retirement plans to Stacy, and transfer half of our shared funds into new accounts that only the two of us could access. However, dealing with Mayor Kyle would prove to be far more challenging. I felt strongly that he needed to be held accountable for his actions, and I intended to expose him for the spineless homewrecker he truly was. That evening, around 8 p.m., I received a phone call at home. Answering, I identified myself as Robert Crawford. The caller introduced himself as Ray Swanson, a city councilman and a friend of Mayor Kyle. He said he wanted to talk about what he called a little misunderstanding involving me, my wife, and the mayor. I was taken aback by his choice of words, given the gravity of the situation, which revolved around an affair between my wife and the mayor. Ray tried to downplay the situation, suggesting it was just a late-night gathering between consenting adults who might have had too much to drink. He was hopeful that we could talk it through and resolve everything. But I didn't hold back. I told him straight. Mayor Kyle had been having an affair with my wife for the past 6 months while I was deployed in Afghanistan, and I had caught them in the act the night before. Ray acknowledged the difficulty of the situation, but expressed hope that a resolution could be found for everyone's benefit. I pressed him on who he meant by everyone, making it clear that my primary concern was for my daughter and myself. The concerns of the mayor and others were the least of my worries. Ray shifted the conversation, mentioning Mayor Kyle's influence in the community and warning about the potential consequences for anyone who harmed his reputation. It was a thinly veiled threat, and I asked him directly if that's what he was doing. Ray quickly backpedaled, saying he was just stating the reality of the situation and that he didn't want to see me or my family hurt. I warned him to listen carefully. I had spent the past 6 months dealing with the Taliban, and I wasn't afraid to take on someone like Mayor Kyle, a dishonorable man who stole another man's wife. I told Ray that neither he nor the mayor had ever faced someone like me before. I wasn't intimidated by Kyle's power, and I made it clear that there would be serious consequences if they tried to challenge me. I also made it known that my soon-to-be ex-wife had failed to mention the repercussions of getting involved with me. I reminded Ray that I had a vast network of former military comrades within a 100-mile radius, all of whom shared a deep disdain for those who exploit soldiers' spouses while they're overseas. I advised Ray to distance himself from Mayor Kyle unless he wanted to face the fallout. Ray attempted to pivot, suggesting that perhaps a large sum of money could make the situation go away. I shut that down immediately. No amount of money could erase the pain that my daughter and I had endured. I told him the only acceptable resolution would be for Mayor Kyle and my wife to experience the same suffering they had inflicted on us. I instructed Ray to pass along that message. Ray, now sounding more concerned, acknowledged the potential fallout from the situation. He seemed eager to find a way to prevent things from escalating further. I laid out my terms. Mayor Kyle had to publicly admit to the affair and resign from his position as mayor. Nothing less would stop me from exposing him and ensuring he faced the consequences of his actions. The ball was in their court, and I made it clear that I wasn't backing down. Ray looked at me with surprise when I expressed how serious my intentions were. I assured him that my resolve was unshakable. As I excused myself to prepare dinner for my daughter, Stacy, she entered from the garage, informing me that she'd placed her mother's belongings by the curb. They had been picked up by someone driving a black Mercedes, an unfamiliar person. Ray joked that the clothes might end up for sale at Goodwill if the wrong person collected them. I mentioned that I had packed Stacy's regular clothes, but hesitated to include her more formal nightgowns. Some of her provocative lingerie, in particular, made me uncomfortable. Stacy simply nodded, understanding my unease. I advised her that she'd eventually have to address the situation with her mother, to which she calmly responded that she would, but only when the time felt right. The weekend passed without further incident. Stacy helped me with the laundry while I focused on an entirely different task, exposing Mayor Connolly's affair. On Monday morning, I reached out to John Foster, an old friend of mine and a journalist at the local paper. John had once served as a sergeant in my National Guard unit, so he knew firsthand the values we held close, the sense of duty that bound us. We met for coffee at Danny's Diner, where he greeted me warmly, and I could see the familiar spark of camaraderie in his eyes. During our conversation, I provided John with details about Mayor Connolly's affair with the wife of one of our soldiers during our deployment in Afghanistan. I refrained from disclosing the soldier's identity, emphasizing the sensitivity of the matter. I stressed that if I were in that soldier's shoes, I wouldn't want such a betrayal to become public knowledge. I shared my observations of the mayor's interactions with the soldier's wife, leaving the decision of how to proceed to John. I also clarified that, contrary to rumors, the woman involved in the affair was not separated or going through a divorce. Her husband had only recently become aware of the situation. John expressed concern about making baseless accusations against the mayor and the potential legal repercussions. When he inquired about evidence of the affair, I presented the pictures and videos I had captured, making sure to request that the woman's identity be partially obscured. John understood the implications and appeared uneasy, but I assured him of my determination. I explained that during Kamali's affair with my wife, I had been overseas, completely unaware of the situation unfolding back home. I emphasized the betrayal of taking advantage of a soldier's absence by engaging in infidelity with his spouse. Understanding the gravity of the situation, John offered to investigate further. After confirming that the affair had persisted throughout my deployment, I transferred the evidence to his cell phone. We briefly reminisced about fallen comrades from our company before parting ways with a firm handshake, the weight of our conversation lingering in the air. Next, I focused on finding a reputable divorce lawyer. After some online research, I chose R.J. Collins ESQ and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. When I arrived at the office, I was surprised to learn that R.J. stood for Revenge Joy, a woman in her 50s, with a no-nonsense demeanor. She wasted no time in asking how she could assist me. I informed her of my need for a divorce, preemptively warning her that it would not be amicable due to my wife's affair with the town mayor during my deployment. Her reaction was one of surprise. She dropped the pen she had been holding. I confirmed that the mayor in question was indeed Kamali, and proceeded to give her a detailed account of the situation. For the next half hour, she listened attentively, taking notes while occasionally pausing to seek clarification or ask questions. When I mentioned my daughter, Stacy, Joy inquired about her feelings regarding the situation. I explained that Stacy was deeply upset and reluctant to stay with her mother during my deployment. Considering Stacy's age and preferences, Joy suggested that she stay with my mother instead. I agreed and decided to contact my mom to arrange it. Our discussion continued for nearly an hour as I provided Joy with an overview of our financial situation. She advised me to discuss potential resolutions with my wife. However, I explained that the closeness between my wife and the mayor left no possibility for reconciliation. I requested that she prepare the divorce papers promptly. Over the following week, Kathy reached out to me 5 times, but I kept our conversations brief, promising to update her on the proceedings later. On Friday, Joy informed me that the divorce papers were ready and needed to know where they should be served. I told her I intended to invite Kathy to my home the following Monday at 2 p.m. while Stacy was at school so that she could be served with the papers. I called Kathy's cell phone and arranged the meeting. Kathy arrived a few minutes early, and we sat down at the kitchen table. Seeing her brought a wave of emotion. Despite everything, she looked beautiful. I offered her coffee, but she declined, asking only for water. I acknowledged her desire to speak and assured her that she would have the chance, but I also informed her that someone would arrive shortly to serve her with the divorce papers. Her expression turned pale. I explained to Kathy that I didn't desire the situation any more than I had desired her affair with Mayor Comely. It seemed that neither of us could catch a break as Kathy implored me to listen to her side of the story, expressing a glimmer of hope for reconciliation. Reluctantly, I agreed to hear her out. She began to recount how she had become involved in Donald's election campaign while I was deployed, and during that lonely time, she formed a friendship with him. Feeling isolated and depressed, she found comfort in Donald's company. Kathy reminisced about a particular dinner event they attended together. Donald had advised her to use her maiden name and to leave her wedding rings at home to avoid the prying eyes of gossip. At the time, she hadn't given it much thought, but now she recognized that removing her rings was a significant mistake. That night, amidst a crowd of mingling guests, she was perceived as a single woman. When I pressed her about when the affair had actually begun, Kathy hesitated before admitting that it didn't start right away. Instead, it blossomed after an evening of close dancing and a lingering kiss when Donald dropped her off. She justified her actions by expressing her profound loneliness and the allure of being treated like royalty by someone well known in our community. I confronted Kathy, questioning her choice to engage in such behavior while I was away serving our country. She acknowledged her wrongdoing, admitting she felt lost and yearned for my presence despite my absence. Kathy explained that Donald's companionship brought her a sense of joy and helped ease her feelings of isolation. She confessed that their outings had become more frequent, escalating to 2 or 3 times a week. One night, after a romantic dinner, Donald invited her back to his place. Despite her initial hesitation, she found herself agreeing to go. Kathy described feeling a wave of remorse afterward, insisting that Donald take her home immediately. Yet, after ending things with him, she found herself reconsidering her decision. Donald had been silent for a while, but eventually reached out to express his desire for her company, assuring her that he missed her and wanted to see her again. He promised not to put her in any compromising situations moving forward. Despite her initial resolve, Kathy confessed that she agreed to meet Donald again the following weekend. She described an evening at a private party hosted by one of Donald's friends on the Bluffs. It was a small gathering of influential couples from town. During the event, she was caught off guard when the wife of a prominent doctor asked how she managed to catch Donald's attention. In that moment, unable to think of a truthful response, Kathy fabricated a story about being separated from me and going through a divorce. This fabricated tale quickly spread throughout our small town, leaving Kathy feeling trapped. During a weekend when our daughter Stacy was away, Kathy spent time with Donald at his home, deepening their ongoing relationship. She expressed deep regret for the pain her actions caused me and Stacy, acknowledging that what she had done was the worst mistake of her life, one she wished she could undo. Yet she admitted that reversing the damage was impossible. When I pressed her about her feelings for Donald, Kathy expressed uncertainty about whether she truly loved him. However, she acknowledged enjoying their time together, even as I probed about the nature of their relationship and the potential for marriage. The tension in the room was palpable when the doorbell rang. I suggested it might be for Kathy. She approached the door slowly, confirming her identity as she accepted a manila envelope. Inside were the divorce papers. Kathy stood at the door for a moment, visibly shaken, before closing it and turning to face me. Tears streamed down her face as she asked if our relationship was truly over. I affirmed that it was. Despite her declarations of love, I pointed out that what she loved was the life we had built together, which she had now discarded. I also informed her that our daughter Stacy would be staying with my mother until my deployment ended. Overwhelmed with regret, Kathy broke down in tears. The next day, the front page of the local newspaper carried a shocking story that sent ripples through our community. A photo accompanied a headline questioning the identity of a married woman leaving a hotel room with Mayor Comely. The picture captured Kathy and the mayor sharing a kiss as they exited room 1114, coupled with a caption that wondered whether her husband serving in Afghanistan was aware of their rendezvous. The article detailed the charity event they attended together, confirming hotel records of the mayor's reservation for the night. It mentioned they were spotted leaving the room at 2 a.m. Additionally, rumors circulated about regular meetings between Kathy and the mayor over the past 6 months while I was deployed. The newspaper justified its decision to publish the story, citing the mayor's public role and the offense of infidelity against a soldier stationed overseas. Within moments of the story hitting doorsteps, the mayor's office swung into damage control, vehemently asserting that the article was entirely fabricated. They claimed that Mayor Cameli would never jeopardize a marriage, especially that of a soldier serving his country. As the fallout from the article began to unfold, Kathy's regret deepened, leaving me to grapple with the painful reality of our shattered family. The situation surrounding Mayor Donald Kai took a shocking turn when allegations of an affair with Kathy, my wife, erupted into the public eye. Many dismissed the incriminating photograph as a mere fabrication, blaming shadowy figures aiming to tarnish the mayor's reputation. A press conference was hastily arranged that afternoon to clarify the matter. However, the whispers of scandal had been circulating for months, as too many people had seen Kathy and the mayor together, displaying affection in public settings. As the scandal unfolded, friends and supporters of the mayor began to distance themselves. Anonymous tips flooded into local newspapers, revealing first-hand accounts of the couple's inappropriate encounters. Outrage grew among the community, particularly when it became known that my wife's husband was deployed overseas in the army while this affair was taking place. At the press conference, the mayor stood alone. Even his closest allies on the city council were notably absent. The only supporters in attendance were his staff, and even then, half of them were missing. Cameras rolled as the mayor attempted to downplay the allegations, claiming that he and Kathy were merely acquaintances and that he had never done anything to shame himself or her husband. Just as he was weaving his narrative, Kathy made her bold entrance. Pushing through the crowd, she reached the microphone, defying the mayor's attempts to deny their relationship. "My name is Kathy Crawford," she announced, her voice trembling but resolute. "I am the wife of Army Major Robert Crawford, and I have been having an affair with Mayor Donald Kai for the past 6 months." Donald tried to dismiss her claim, calling her a liar, but Kathy pressed on, tears in her eyes as she confronted him about the hurt he had caused. "You pursued me knowing I was married. My husband is serving our country while you were playing this game." She turned to the cameras, apologizing to me, her voice breaking as she left the stage. The reporters bombarded the mayor with questions, but he stormed back into City Hall, visibly rattled. I sat in my living room, watching the entire debacle unfold on television, and I must admit, my heart felt like it was being ripped apart. The world now knew of my wife's betrayal, and it shattered my already fragile sense of self. I had taken a risk by working with John Foster, my contact at the newspaper, but I never anticipated this outcome would feel so hollow. Later that day, the president of the city council announced the mayor's resignation, citing the ongoing scandal and the need for stability within the city. I should have felt a sense of vindication, but instead, I was engulfed by an overwhelming loneliness. I missed Kathy more than I ever thought possible. My heart burned with anger, but it was also filled with a profound sense of loss. A few days later, I learned that Donald Kai had packed up and left town without so much as a forwarding address. Kathy, however, remained behind, and as my emergency leave drew to a close, I spent as much time as I could with my daughter Stacy. I allowed Kathy to move back into our home temporarily, trying to keep things stable for our daughter. We traveled to my mother's house, about 60 miles away, to enroll Stacy in school, promising her I would be back as soon as my deployment was over. The following week, I boarded a flight back to Afghanistan, my heart burning with unresolved feelings rage that I intended to unleash on our enemies in the desert. Meanwhile, I learned through mutual acquaintances that Kathy had moved in with Donald. The betrayal cut deep, but I had to focus on my duty. Fast forward a few weeks, I returned to Afghanistan, but not without injury. An ambush left me critically wounded. I lost one of my legs during the attack. It was a challenging time, and my daughter was my rock, helping me through the physical and emotional recovery. Now, I work as a design specialist for a large electronics firm. I live with Stacy and occasionally speak out about the challenges faced by soldiers who serve overseas. While my marriage with Kathy crumbled under the weight of betrayal, I found resilience in my daughter and the determination to rise again. In a different story, I was navigating the complexities of my relationship with my girlfriend, whom I had dated for 5 years. I met her in college, and after graduation, we moved in together. Our bond grew stronger during the pandemic, and I was even planning to propose. She was my best friend, and I never imagined she could hurt me. My girlfriend was the quintessential extrovert, always making friends wherever she went, while I was more introverted, preferring my smaller circle of buddies. One of her friends, however, made me uneasy. She had never hidden her dislike for me, which made her presence at gatherings particularly uncomfortable. When my girlfriend planned a surprise birthday party for this friend, I knew I had to trust her. The night of the party arrived, and I drove my girlfriend to her friend's apartment. I reluctantly joined her upstairs to say hello to the other guests. Most were friendly, but the atmosphere felt charged, especially with that one friend around. As the party went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Conversations swirled around me, laughter echoing in the air, yet I felt like an outsider in my own relationship. I noticed how my girlfriend's friend kept stealing glances at me, whispering to others and then laughing. It made me uneasy. Trying to push those thoughts aside, I forced myself to enjoy the evening for my girlfriend's sake. But as the night unfolded, the tension grew, and my heart sank with each passing moment. Little did I know, I was about to face an unexpected betrayal that would change everything. It all started with an offhand comment from Jessica, a friend of my girlfriend Sarah, who had never really liked me. She joked about knowing someone who would be a better fit for Sarah, but her tone was laced with an edge that made me uneasy. I glanced at Sarah, and she shot a dirty look, telling her to knock it off. I felt a surge of relief. It seemed she wouldn't entertain the idea of someone else. After that awkward moment, I decided to head home and unwind. I fired up my gaming console and lost myself in the virtual world, teaming up with one of my buddies online for a few hours. When I finally sank onto the couch, I scrolled through my phone, curious about the night's events from the party. I checked Instagram to see what everyone was up to. Most of the posts were lighthearted, filled with laughter and fun. I spotted Sarah, who appeared to be enjoying herself, mingling and leading the festivities. But as I continued scrolling, I noticed her posts dwindling. It seemed like she disappeared from the feed altogether, which struck me as odd. I shrugged it off, chalking it up to her wanting some privacy, and turned in for the night, excited to see her the next day. When morning arrived, I checked my phone again, scrolling through photos from the party. That's when I came across a post by Jessica that made my stomach drop. It featured Sarah, Jessica, and a guy I didn't recognize, all of them smiling and posing together, arms linked. I frowned, recalling that the party was supposed to be for girls only. Why was there a guy there? My eyes widened as I noticed where his hands rested on Sarah's waist, just a little too low for comfort. She was blushing and smiling up at him, and I felt a wave of unease wash over me. Was this just innocent fun, or something more? Intrigued, I clicked on the tag to find the guy's profile. I didn't know him, but it was clear he and Sarah were following each other on Instagram. Alarm bells rang in my head when I discovered that he was in a relationship. I didn't want to bring this up when Sarah returned later that day. I didn't want to come off as the paranoid, jealous boyfriend. Days passed, and I began to notice subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She seemed distant and less eager to spend time with me. Instead of cuddling on the couch to watch our favorite shows, she'd retreat to the bedroom, glued to her phone. There were fewer hugs, fewer kisses, and definitely no more sleeping together. Where she used to tell me about her plans, now she slipped out without a word, leaving me in the dark. When I confronted her about it, she snapped back, reminding me that she was an adult and didn't need my permission to go anywhere. That night, we ended up in a heated argument. I could tell that a lot of her frustration stemmed from things Jessica had said about me. "It feels like you're holding me back from living my life," she shouted, and I stood there, speechless, hurt by her words. I decided it was best to leave and cool off. The following morning, Sarah apologized, insisting she didn't mean what she said. We forgave each other, but after several days of similar behavior, I began to suspect she was hiding something. One night, driven by a whirlwind of anxiety, I grabbed her phone while she was asleep and began scrolling through her messages. I had to quell the storm of paranoia swirling in my mind. I first searched for the name of the guy in the Instagram post, but nothing came up. Then, I typed in nightclub to see what popped up. The messages were flooded with conversations between Sarah and her friends. But one name caught my attention: Chloe. I thought I knew everyone in her social circle, but I had never heard of a Chloe. I opened the conversation, and to my shock, it turned out Chloe was the guy from the Instagram post. As I scrolled through the messages, my heart sank. They had exchanged explicit photos and flirtatious texts. One message from him read, "I can't wait to be with you again." The word "again" echoed in my mind, sending chills down my spine. The worst part, however, was finding a message from Sarah where she called me boring and expressed her desire for excitement by sneaking around with this guy. My heart shattered as reality sunk in. I was being cheated on, and the dreams I had for our future were crumbling before my eyes. I left the bedroom and sank into the living room, trying to collect my thoughts. I had no intention of staying with someone who didn't value me and treated me like I was disposable. If she craved excitement, I would give it to her in a way she'd never expect. I had been planning to propose, with a ring tucked away, but that idea felt hollow now. Instead, I envisioned a grand public humiliation for her, a fitting response to her betrayal. The day of the proposal arrived, and the weather was picture-perfect, a crisp winter day, with delicate snowflakes drifting through the air. As I set the stage for the public spectacle, I felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. Sarah, the extroverted social butterfly she was, would undoubtedly want a grand gesture. Little did she know that today would be all about revealing the truth rather than celebrating our love. As the moment approached, I knew this would change everything. The excitement buzzing around us felt like a ticking clock, and soon, the truth would be laid bare for everyone to see. It was supposed to be a romantic evening to remember, a night filled with laughter and love. We had made plans to visit the roller rink that popped up in the heart of the city every winter. The vibrant lights and festive music promised a magical experience. Unbeknownst to my girlfriend, 3 of her friends and my best buddy were hidden in the crowd, armed with cameras and eagerly waiting for my big moment. They all thought I was going to propose. As the night unfolded, I approached the DJ, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and nerves. "Hey, I have a special surprise planned for my girlfriend," I told him, flashing a grin that belied the storm brewing inside me. He smiled back, handing over the microphone, clearly assuming I was about to pop the question. I stepped into the center of the rink, the twinkling lights illuminating the faces of the skaters and onlookers. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" I called out, my voice echoing across the rink. The crowd turned, their smiles wide, expecting a heartfelt proposal. But when I said, "I'm breaking up with you because I know about your affair," the atmosphere shifted instantly. Gasps filled the air, and the joyous expressions faded into shock and disbelief. The rink fell silent as everyone turned to look at my girlfriend. Her face transformed into a deep shade of crimson, the color of humiliation painting her cheeks. I recounted how I had discovered the text messages that shattered my trust. "I'll be moving out into my own apartment," I announced, my voice steady. "You won't hear from me again." The weight of my words hung heavily in the air. Among the crowd was her friend, someone who had never liked me. I shot her a pointed glance. "And you," I said, "should really work on being a better person." I felt a flicker of satisfaction as I watched her expression shift from disdain to surprise. Once I had finished, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. Mixed with the raw pain of betrayal, I had to take control of the narrative somehow. So, I reached out to the girlfriend of the man my girlfriend had been cheating with. I laid everything out for her, detailing the affair and the hurt it had caused. Her reaction was swift. She ended things with him immediately and took to Instagram Live, broadcasting the entire situation to her followers. It was surreal to see her, tearful yet resolute, sharing her side of the story with the world. Reflecting on this whirlwind of events, it became clear to me that infidelity and secrecy in relationships can inflict serious wounds on trust and respect. What had started as a hopeful evening turned into a dramatic public spectacle, an expression of my pain and disappointment rather than the romantic moment we had all anticipated. While I understood the instinct to inform the other partner about the betrayal, I also recognized that such actions could escalate the situation, leading to further complications and hurt. In the aftermath, I realized the importance of focusing on my own healing and seeking support from friends and professionals who could help me navigate the emotional fallout. It was time to rebuild, not just from this heartbreak, but from the shattered trust that would take a long time to mend. If you found this story compelling and chilling, don't forget to share it with others who might be interested. Your support means the world to us. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more true crime stories like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and we appreciate you being part of our community.